All right. So hi, everyone. For those of you that may be first years or haven't met you yet, I'm Julie Latcham. I'm the Director of Career Services here at the School of Architecture. And for our final, for our meet and greet this semester, we have RIOS. So I'm going to turn it over to Nate, who I've been coordinating with, and he has a full team coming. So he'll introduce everybody.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us. I'm Nate Cormier. I help lead our landscape practice here at RIOS. We are a multidisciplinary firm based in Los Angeles. And today I'm joined by a cross-section of our team. We wanted to give you as much of a feeling as we could of really coming into our warehouse, exploring, getting to stop at different desks, find out about some work in progress, some of the greatest hits, and really express, who we are and our curiosity and the diversity of our practice. You'll see very quickly that it's quite an eclectic bunch of people and projects. So with that, our mission, what unifies the 170-ish of us, is really a passion for storytelling about places. In the background here, you can see our warehouse. We're right along the Expo line, halfway between downtown Los Angeles and the Pacific Ocean. We're a diverse and youthful, at least in spirit, if not in person, bunch, very much concerned about the communities where we work, and really trying to bring our passion and our curiosity to helping make great places. We have folks who practice across an incredibly wide range of disciplines: urban planning, architecture, landscape architecture, urban design, branding, product design. Our most popular item is actually a coffee cup. There's been everything from surfboards to quilts and all sorts of things over the 30 plus years of existence of the practice. And again, really it's about working with communities, working with clients that are passionate about telling the story, an authentic story of place. That's what brings us together across all these scales and all these disciplines. So I'll share a few projects, and then I think Gabby's teed up to follow me with some work, and we're just gonna go around the room and have people talk about some of the things they're working on or things from the practice that they're particularly excited about, some of the initiatives, research and community things that are happening in the office that we also want to highlight. We've been working in Austin for several years. So some of us, especially Andy, who's also been working with Julie to help organize this, has been leading the transformation of the Verbo headquarters, a really wonderful collaboration of our interior architecture practice and interior gardens. So creating great spaces for workplace and trying to give a unique sense of place to different gathering spaces within the work environment. Another exciting project that Andy and I co-led across our disciplines, Andy's an architect and I'm a landscape architect, has been a new vision for what's called Drake Bridge Commons, which is turning the space underneath the First Street Bridge, just below City Hall in Austin on Lady Bird Lake, into a community gathering space. We're hopeful this will get moving again. We've developed a concept for the Trail Foundation, and there's certainly, it's more ambitious than perhaps they even imagined when they called us. And so it'll take some fundraising, but it's about bringing the city all the way to the lake and bringing some of these environmental qualities of the lake environment up into the city and really making that strong connection between the civic core and all of the experiences along the lake. And I'll talk about our flagship public open space project. We love doing civic and community projects. This is a 12-acre park and a series of public spaces that make up a corridor of spaces between what is all of the kind of museum district up on Bunker Hill. So that's, where, if you're familiar with the Frank Gehry's music hall, and then that descends the hill about 90 feet all the way down to our city hall, which you see in the distance below Grand Park. Our design for Grand Park was really inspired by the community outreach, working with people all over Los Angeles County speaking over 200 different languages. Over half of the people in Los Angeles County speak a language other than English at home. And so trying to translate that into the design of a series of botanical gardens that speak to the homelands of all those people of Los Angeles and express that in different precincts and districts throughout this park. As I said, kind of connecting this cultural core, the music center, all the way down to City Hall. And you can see in the lower right some playful expression of these homelands and turning that into these floristic kingdoms in the park, and just making a great place for the community to come together for passive open space experiences. And so at the top of the park, that's where you get to Grand Avenue, which traverses Bunker Hill. And on the other side of the street is a recently completed Music Center Plaza between the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion and the Mark Taper Forum. And the goal here was to take a space which had been just sort of in between getting you to the different cultural venues. The Music Center, which is also the programming partner for all of the spaces of Grand Park, wanted to bring their activities outside and take these high arts, which used to be something that only the wealthy would drive to, go into the parking garage, come up, go to their show, and then go away. And Vicky's going to tell you another story that's similar in Texas in a little while. But to say, no, instead, we want people of all of Los Angeles to have these experiences. And so they transformed their plaza from something which was quite inaccessible and really only about moving through into a real destination. Lots of food and beverage opportunities, again, a collaboration between our landscape and our architecture and our interiors, and even some product design for some of the tableware and seating and so forth in these new venues on the plaza, and making this incredibly flexible surface that's dynamic and alive with media and water, but at the same time can be a space that thousands of people can gather for all sorts of cultural programming that's now taking place. And so really seeing these spaces come alive with community and cultural experiences. And with everything we've been going through the last few weeks, it's also really important to note that these are the spaces where we can express ourselves as a democracy. These are the spaces that support civic statements. As a community, as a collective, we can come out and be together at the footsteps, in the case of Los Angeles, of our city hall. So we also like to work on really intimate spaces, small community gathering spaces that speak to more of a neighborhood experience. This one is also in downtown Los Angeles, but in the rapidly growing South Park neighborhood. That a change in pace, change in scale, an eddy to get out of the bustle of the city into a more intimate space. This actually is a slide that I love because it showcases our whole amazing team, Peter and Yoon and Fawad in the background, and I like to slip my kids into every presentation that I do, so they're hanging out in the foreground. And then finally, the last one I'll share is a part of our practice that is growing now and we're really excited about is our work in hospitality. Gabby's going to talk to you about some of our high-end residential practice, which has been a staple of our practice. And what we're seeing is hospitality is a natural place where we can start to take some of the experimentation and high quality detailing and rich experiences of those private estates and bring them out into a commercial and community setting through hospitality. So this one is called the One Hotel. It is a sort of environmentally focused brand. And this was their Los Angeles outpost, actually in West Hollywood on Sunset. And we used a lot of reclaimed materials, local lumber from trees that had been felled in the city, turned those into this kind of rich, immersive environment as if the Hollywood Hills had spilled down between the buildings of the hotel. And our work there included both the landscape and collaboration on the interiors. And just really trying to give this on brand, but also authentic to our place experience in a hospitality setting. And I'm going to hand it off now to Gabby, who's going to tell you a little bit about our residential practice. I think she's here.
Sorry, just realized I was on mute. I'm Gabby, and I work predominantly with our high-end residential practice. And I think to harken on Nate's point, we're a multidisciplinary umbrella architecture office that works on projects of such different and massive scales. Within the residential practice, that's the same. I think all of our projects typically fall within the high end, but they range from 3,000 square foot to 30,000 square foot. And every single project is very specific and very bespoke to working with the individual clients who are the homeowners and the end users, versus working with a developer where you need to actually come up with your target demographic. So this is a very personal experience. It's almost like being a therapist and an architect and a designer all in one. This is a residence in Palm Springs. It's about a 6,000 square foot residence. It has beautiful views out to the street, or out to the mountains that you see in the background. If you go to the next slide, it shows the back of the house. The purpose of this house was to close it off from the street and create a sense of privacy, but completely open up the back to the landscape, both the immediate landscape by creating all of these slot canyons that could take advantage of indoor-outdoor space, while also opening up to the views. And so as you walk through the house, which is currently under construction, you get all these amazing view corridors with layered experiences of the exterior environment throughout the space. It's really quite lovely. Next slide, Nate. This is the Stone Canyon residence in Bel Air. This is one of the houses that falls on the larger end of the spectrum. We're currently around 17,400 square feet. It's in a huge canyon, so the client owns all of this property coming down towards the house. And the house is like a modern Japanese pavilion that really takes advantage of slipping through the existing landscape. I think if you go to the next slide, this is actually a view of the primary living space at level 02. But the thought is that level 2 is really the private residence, and the residence staggers down the hillside and completely integrates with the canyon. I think if you go to the next slide, you can see a 3D view. So we're taking advantage of the sloping hillside to terrace the house down towards the street. And again, because most of these clients end up being on the higher end of the spectrum, they're usually look to have privacy towards the front and completely open up in the back. Next slide. These two houses are actually representational of the smaller ends of the spectrum, both houses being on narrow lots in Venice. This is the modern bungalow. If you go to the next slide, you can actually see the floor plan. Oh, whoops, both. I think we missed a floor plan, but that's fine. This is actually the home of one of our partners in the firm. The whole house actually reverses the idea of what a typical bungalow in Venice looks like. They've put all of their private spaces on the front of the lot, the bedroom, and then they have all their private spaces spilling out into the back, completely opening up into a private garden that creates a bit of an oasis on a pretty narrow lot. And then the next house is also representational of a narrow lot in Venice, where every single space actually slips past the other and opens up into its own separate garden. If you go to the next slide, I think you can start to see how every single space slips forward to open up to this courtyard. And while it's an extremely narrow lot surrounded by neighboring houses, it feels like its own oasis separate from everything else. It's really quite lovely.
Hey everyone, my name's Sean. I work at Studio at RIOS. We're sort of a mixed-use studio that's sort of a catch-all for all the projects that don't quite fit into the other studios in the office. We do a range of work from medical research centers to working on the public plaza that Nate shared earlier. We also do a lot of creative office work. We've designed recently billboards, comedy venues. Just a wide range of work. So today I wanted to share with you a couple of creative office projects that I've been involved in the office lately. One is a large campus interior TI, which is about 120,000 square feet in downtown LA for a confidential client, which I'll try not to say the name of. And then the other is a similar size, 120,000 square foot office campus in Marina Del Rey that is a totally ground up core and shell project. So in the office campus that we're looking at in the downtown LA Arts District here. One of the challenges was that we had to, the owner was trying to expand beyond just music streaming and into actual music production. So all the spaces you see in blue on this plan are typical employee office spaces, which would be workstations, meeting rooms, food programs that support those, like large cafeteria, large barista, and large sort of communal lounge areas. If you go to the next slide, we can look at some of those typical office spaces. So we see the barista station on the left. We also have a program where we're inviting local artists to come in and do murals, which you can kind of see in the background of the barista station. And then we have just a number of meeting rooms that are located in freestanding volumes within the existing building that you see in the top right-hand corner. And then sort of a range of spaces on the bottom left where we have these communal main streets which sort of function as employee lounges, and off of those main axes, there's located workstations, meeting rooms, cafeterias, et cetera, et cetera. And so on the other end of the spectrum for this project, all the spaces you see here on this plan in yellow were production spaces. So studios, artist lounges, a large event hall, podcast studios, and you can kind of see the range of different programs we're accommodating down below. So we have a 725 person event space. We have a number, about 10 artist listening room lounges and listening rooms, and then a 72 person screening room actually in the campus as well. And then so these are some of the more acoustically inclined spaces in the project. On the left, you see one of the artist lounges. Each of those lounges has a totally different, unique interior fit out. On the top right, you see the event hall where we can fit up to 725 people for a communal gathering and to basically see live music. And then in the bottom right, we see one of the recording studios. And then this project is currently under construction. So I'm currently working on CA with a number of people from RIOS. There's a lot of conflicts that arise from basically working within existing buildings, but it also presents a lot of kind of fun and unique challenges to resolve. So on the left, you see a large new footing that is being cut out of an existing slab, and you can kind of see where the existing column footings come into conflict with the outline of that footing. Beside that, you sort of see some of, we're really building, you know, rooms within buildings within buildings and rooms within rooms. So you can sort of see the large CMU volumes in the upper right that are housing the screening room and recording studio functions. And then those actually all get fitted out with room within room assembly where we have acoustically isolated floors, walls, and ceilings within those CMU enclosures for acoustics. And then you can sort of see on the bottom right, the new steel that's going in to frame out the new second floor that we're putting in the existing warehouse. And then more, just a few images, you can sort of, again, you can see the sort of buildings within buildings that we're creating. So you see on the bottom left-hand corner, a bank of meeting rooms that is actually its own freestanding volume that will have shear walls and separate footings that actually fits within the double height warehouse space. And then it's a phased project. There's 4 construction phases. So currently the first phase is wrapping up. So you can kind of see some spaces on the right-hand side of the screen as they finish up. The other project I wanted to briefly talk about today is Marina Del Rey. So again, same size office campus, but instead of an interior TI, we're doing a totally ground up core and shell office campus for a client. It's totally speculative. There's no end user as of yet. So it's sort of the reverse of the project we just looked at. It's a mixed use site in Marina Del Rey. It neighbors a commercial use, residential use, and yeah. So, So one of the first big challenges that we faced on this project was the area in which we're building has a specific zoning plan which mandates that the parking count that we were required to provide was at twice as much as what would typically be required in LA. So we had to provide twice as many parking spaces as we would otherwise. So we ended up having to cram about 500 parking spaces into this lot. It's also very close to the water table, so we weren't digging below grade was cost prohibitive. So what we ended up was we had a large parking podium that we had to contend with, and the client also had a large interest in creating really small office floor plates and breaking the site up into multiple buildings. So what we ended up with was three buildings spread across the site, and then a mixture of both landscape at grade and then landscape up on a podium that sits above the parking garage. And because we also had to, we needed to maintain a large setback for a fire access lane around the entire site, a lot of the exterior spaces in this project became very small and intimate. You know, the courtyards are really only 30 to 40 feet wide. And so we tried to use that to our advantage to really break up a series of both communal spaces shown in red in this diagram, and then private tenant spaces outlined in blue, and really have those two sort of programmatic elements play off of each other and, you know, give the owner unique outdoor spaces that they could actually lease to the tenants and have courtyard spaces that were, you know, desirable and activated by these private kind of tenant niches. We also looked heavily at the street frontage along Glencoe, and we actually provided, you know, well beyond the code required setbacks and the most street frontage of any development along the entire block. And we included, you know, short-term bicycle parking, we included a pet relief area, and we included a kind of public gathering space right at the main Paseo entry between the two buildings. And then so just sort of, you know, the buildings in this case really sort of became more, I would say, a backdrop for the landscape team to do their work. In the top left-hand corner, you sort of enter into the campus from the street. Moving to the right, you sort of have an intimate at-grade courtyard, you know, for public use for all different tenants throughout the office campus. Moving to the bottom left, you can kind of see how we mitigate up over the parking garage podium and into the landscape up above the parking garage podium. And we provided a large communal stair for people to eat lunch and, you know, any other kind of communal activity. And then, sorry, just briefly, CLT was a big driver for this project in particular. So one of the ways we chose to express CLT was by pulling out the roof plates and expressing the glulam beams and the CLT panels on the exterior of the building. The other way, we did a small independent research project with our structural engineer Holmes, where we looked at different 30 by 30 typical office bay grids. And we found that, you know, using the timber and steel hybrid that we employed in this building was a similar steel or concrete structure was created 43% to 157% more carbon emissions. And then we also looked at, you know, how much we could offset our carbon footprint by the amount of trees we were planting on the site. We were able to reduce that by another 33% just with the amount of carbon sequestered in the trees. Thanks.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, Sean. So we've got a special the leaders, some of the leaders of our social impact initiative.
Thanks, Nate and Sean. Hi, everyone. My name is Andres, and Clarence and I will talk about some of the social impact work that the office has been doing as well. So within all this great work that you're seeing, social impact and social equity have also been a really big priority for the office, and especially obviously after the death of George Floyd, but the death of a lot of Black and brown people at the hands of police. So this was a statement that was put out by the office in May 31st when these events were beginning to unfold. We go to the next slide. And then over the last 6 months, a small group of folks within the office began to meet and began to really try to solidify a strategy and a mission and an actual kind of road forward for the office to deal with issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So through these past 6 months, we've kind of been developing the statement that continues to evolve, but we're really kind of acknowledging that we really need to use kind of our power to transform the physical and social spaces that we work with. And it is kind of our duty as professionals to do that and critically examine both our bias within the office culture, but also with our profession as a whole, given our history. And this is, again, just a quick timeline of some of this. It's been, I don't know how many meetings we've had. We had hundreds and hundreds of meetings with different folks from all over the office, from marketing to branding, with the creative directors, with partners. So it's been a lot of really exciting and fun work. Go to the next one. And then all that work has really kind of now evolved to the creation of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council, a number of committees and initiatives, and over 42 volunteers that have kind of joined this effort. And what's been really exciting about all of that is that the office has kind of embraced the leadership of a lot of designers. So this has been, to an extent, kind of like a bottoms-up approach that's now including the whole office. And it's really given opportunity for a lot of us to kind of emphasize our lived experiences and our diversity as other important factors of the work that we do. And I will let Clarence kind of dive a little bit into the nitty-gritty. If we can go back one, Nate, actually. And he'll go over kind of the council, the committees, and some of the work that we've actually started doing.
Hi, as Andres said, my name is Clarence, and I'll be going over a little bit of the structure. So we've developed a structure where we have a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council. That council is made up of people from all across the office, regardless of your discipline, your professional designation, your position, and that the role of the council is to sort of lead the policy and lead what the goals are for diversity, equity, and inclusion for the office. And then each one of those people on the council also sits on a committee. So if we go forward, we've developed 5 different initiatives, 3 of which have a sitting committee and 2 which are kind of headed by professional staff within the office. So each one of these committees, as I said, is made up of a couple of people from the council that kind of serve as sort of the reminder that these are the council goals and these are the things that we're trying to do as the office, and then selecting 1 or 2 committee leaders from the office at large, and then also having this sea of volunteers that can kind of float in and out of separate initiatives and programs. And then for these ongoing initiatives, those are, again, headed by professional staff. So personal and collective growth would be something that's headed by our director of culture, and then recruitment and internal mentorship is something that is headed by HR. So to briefly go over what some of those committees are, we have an external mentorship, which is all about capacity building and building that pipeline, exposing people and youth pretty much from middle school up until young adults to the design professions, giving them some of those professional skills, interviewing, portfolio review, and all of that, not just related to architecture, landscape, and other design disciplines, but then also looking at all of the sectors that our office has. So also looking at shop skills or looking at business skills. And then business development, which is focused on those partnerships and collaborations. How do we go after new projects? What is our stance on those projects? And how we begin to have messaging behind not just the projects, but then how do we interact with clients? The third is community building, which is less about pro bono work and more about using our role and our expertise as a design firm to be stewards in the community. How can we help communities out when they are looking for design work? How can we create partnerships so that sort of smaller firms can have some sort of go-between? And then also, how can we help and serve as a resource for communities within their public process? And then the last two are the ongoing initiatives, recruitment of professionals. Again, as I said, that's kind of headed up by HR. It's looking at just how do we begin to have a more diverse body of employees coming in? What are the avenues for retention and promotion, but then also looking at mentorship opportunities within the office. And then the second is personal and collective growth, which is looking at cultural competency, addressing bias and microaggressions within the office, but then also the fun part, which is sort of exposure to new ideas that or history of different cultures that we have within the office. Then the last slide is just like a brief kind of overview of a couple of the initiatives that we have so far. We're hoping to continue and make more of these partnerships. Our mentorship opportunities right now are focused on ACE, which is architecture, construction, engineering, and then looking at First Place for Youth, which is about youth that are transitioning out of the foster system. Then we also have sort of our community building, which is, again, how are we stewards in the community, but then also how we use our office space with Lamert Park and the desk loan, but then looking at how can we also continue our pro bono efforts. So I'll pass it along to the next person now.
I should mention, I described us as being halfway between downtown and the Pacific Ocean, but we're also located in Lamert Park, which is one of the historically African-American neighborhoods of Los Angeles that's going through change, and there's a lot of complexity around that. And so through these community relationships, that's one of the great ways that we've been able to get to know our neighbors and become better neighbors in our own communities.
Unmuting myself. Hey everybody, my name's Jeff. I'm an architect with RIOS. I've been with the company for about 5 years. Thanks Clarence and Andres for that description of such an important part of our office. I'm happy to see so many faces on this call. I know we're kind of throwing a lot of information at everyone. Hopefully it's not too overwhelming, but I'll try to keep it.
We like to hear about
all of it, so. Okay, so I'll just tell you a little bit about what I've been doing at RIOS for the last few years. So a lot of what I do has to do with commercial office space, creative office space, and our clients often come to us with, you'll see a few examples here. This is the first one, Playa District, an existing asset of 5 high-rise towers, and they've been sitting there for 30 years, and they're a little out of date, and they say, well, what can we do with these? And so we generally try to come up with ways to activate and energize and connect them into the larger fabric of the city. So this is in Playa Vista. This project particularly ended up being all about the kind of ground plane. You know, they came to us with all these ideas about, do we reclad the towers, or do we, you know, what kind of TI work do we do? And we said, you don't really have money for that, but what you can do is you have all this existing outdoor space, and you have all these lobbies in your towers. How do you link all of that together, kind of in section, and activate it? And so we came up with all these ways to kind of divide the landscape up into different worlds and give it different identities, and activate it with activity, outdoor conferencing and food trucks and sports courts and lots of different methods. But also at the same time, trying to keep the tone of everything sort of a little bit more elegant and grown up. You see a lot of these kind of creative office campuses becoming kind of like adult daycares almost, you know, there's like games and there's bocce and there's this and there's that. So we tried to kind of strike a balance and keep things kind of elegant and grown up. So hopefully that kind of comes through in some of what you're seeing here. Again, I'm going to try to keep this high level. These are very long stories and I'm trying to keep them short, but this is Horton Plaza in San Diego. I don't know how much people are familiar with the kind of urban world of San Diego, but this is right in the center. This is near the Gaslamp District. It's a 3-block by 3-block area. It's an existing outdoor mall designed by the Jardy Partnership back in 1984, I think it was. kind of a postmodern world of disappearing stairways and essentially allowing for people to get lost in the retail experience. And so our client, again, came to us with this existing space and said, well, what do we do? Retail is dying, and at least brick and mortar retail is sort of going away. And we want to reposition this as mostly creative office for new tenants. So what do we do? And so we tried to link into that kind of thinking and that kind of language and do justice to the existing spaces and to some of those existing experiences, while also modernizing it and doing a lot of big heavy lifting in terms of, well, you know, a Nordstrom building or a Macy's building is a 250 foot by 250 foot deep windowless box, right? So you can't do that for office. So we had to do a lot of big moves in terms of, and yeah, you'll see it here. So that's the existing condition, right? You see all these bridges and these triangular kind of forms, rotundas. And so we cut big holes into some of those. And you'll see, like in that, yeah, sorry, yeah, the A position there and the B, we cut big holes. We refenestrated most of the structures. This is one of probably 50 studies we did on how to re-articulate the facade of this building. Of course, it all had to meet Title 24 California energy requirements, right? So we had a lot of technical constraints in terms of how much glazing we could use, but we worked with that and tried to let it lead the design effort. And this is just one of the existing buildings. We added a new high-rise structure on top of it and refenestrated the whole thing. It all is kind of, you know, what was the retail experience and all these kind of getting lost and moving through the brick and mortar of the space. We tried to kind of reformat that as a continuation of landscape experiences. And so it ends in this park as Nate is clicking through here. We've added some new food and beverage nodes into that and really tried to make the whole place feel like it almost got taken over by landscape, and linking those experiences that way. The third thing I'll talk about, the third and final thing I'll talk about is really interesting kind of thought piece we did for LA Magazine. So this is not a project in the traditional sense. This was just a kind of thought leadership piece that we pulled together as an office. And I think it's a really interesting example of how RIOS tries to think creatively about solving problems in the urban environment. So basically the request was, we've got an affordable housing crisis in Los Angeles, like a lot of cities. How do we solve that architecturally? And so we said, one way to solve that would be to remove land ownership from the speculative real estate environment, right? So people buy property, all the property becomes more and more valuable because people own it, obviously, and it drives up the cost. We said, what if you took existing properties that are owned by the city of Los Angeles that are underutilized, their parking lots, their service yards, whatever, and you give those over to a non-profit organization that then controls them in perpetuity, maybe for, say, 100-year lease. The people that then live there can essentially, they own their house or they own part of their apartment building, but they don't own the land. The land is owned by this nonprofit. And so it keeps costs way, way down because the main driver of cost in Los Angeles is real estate, the real estate market. And then you could do some interesting things. Maybe Nate, if you could go back one, you could get a kind of like wider spread of housing typologies, studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, around publicly shared landscape spaces, and maybe even a little bit of shared agriculture spaces. But basically provide flexibility for people who don't have immediate entry because of financial situations into the housing market in Los Angeles, a more stable way to be a part of the community and feel like they have a stake in it. With that, I can hand it over to, I think, who's next? Vicky.
Were you Doko? I thought you were Doko.
I am not Doko.
Well, does anybody? All right, I know about the project. I stayed there last weekend,
Okay.
so I can share that. This is an exciting redevelopment project, a former Westfield Mall site next to the Sacramento Kings Stadium, and it's residential hotel. The Sawyer Kimpton Hotel is there, as well as surrounding public spaces and hospitality amenities. We'll look at some of the interior work there, the environmental graphics team, the pool and outdoor amenities. It was really cold when I was there, but we're still hanging out. And this integration with a big transformation in this part of downtown Sacramento around the district and bringing people back to downtown. And this was sort of one of the anchor projects to that broader urban design vision. Vicki, you're on.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vicki. I'm a project director in our landscape department. We work on a wide range of project types. Today, I'm going to just briefly talk about Lynn White Square for the Performing Arts, which is an urban transformation project in Houston, Texas, previously known as Jones Plaza. So in early 2018, our team was selected by Houston First to reimagine this long forgotten parcel of the downtown Houston as a very dynamic and new destination in the theater district. As you can see in the top diagram here, the square is surrounded by many performing art venues and organizations, and it's also located in close proximity to Houston's Green, Buffalo Bay Open Space Network, and currently the plaza sits on top of a very old existing garage and visually inaccessible from the surroundings. So the diagram below kind of illustrates our initial design approaches. We see the theater district as a magnetic field of culture, and in the Jones Plaza is the epicenter of the theater district, also being influenced by the surrounding cultural forces. So if the plaza is the performing stage, then the play on the stage is the flows of urban life, and which invisibly shape the form of the plaza. So being inspired by the movement of the performing arts and choreography, we envision White Square as a place that actually connects to the surrounding venues, as well as a destination that invites and attracts people in for gathering and performance. Nate, if you could go back to the bird's eye. So this is the bird's eye view approaching the plaza from Texas Avenue to the left and Buffalo Bay. So this threshold features a cascading kind of fountain with accessible walkway bisecting through. And as you can see, the center green lawn allows large gatherings and events, of course, post-pandemic, and also framed by a ring of trees and lights. So at the southwest corner, you can see the landscape peels up to reveal a restaurant that addresses both park and the street level. Nate, if you could go to the Gateway Garden view. Yeah, so this is a view looking at the southeast corner of the site. We have designed a garden space with like seasonal planting interests and movable furniture as a passive place for people to hang out and relax. Next slide. So this is a view looking at the restaurant. We've designed 2 overlook spots in the site to kind of observe the city life, as well as the terraced seating facing the center green. This view is showing the early version of the restaurant with the green roof, showing the prairie plants that connect to the site and bay beyond. Nate, if you could go to the next. Yeah, so as part of the VE exercise during construction documentation, the planted roof was replaced by tiles, but this is a render showing the restaurant in a gloomy, rainy day in Houston. The pattern of the tiles is designed to be integrated with the site from above, using like subtle color transitions and edge feathering. So as a summary, we have completed the bid document, I think just a few weeks ago, and this project is slated to begin construction in several months. I've been working on this project since I joined RIOS about 3 years ago, so I'm very much looking forward to the realization of this project. I also wanted to share just a little bit about the research initiative. So RIOS has provided kind of a office-wide platform and support for our research efforts, with the goal of promoting employees as thought leaders in different fields and advancing our design innovation. So in 2018, my team's proposal was selected by the research committee in our firm. And our topic is bridging urban and wildness through play. So we identified the inequalities in accessing green spaces in our communities. So our goal was to use the simplest design interventions to kind of instill the spirit of playfulness in urban design, especially, in the forgotten pieces of land. We generated like 4 individual prototypes, creating these playful moments in like small scale spaces where daily life occurs, but not limited by a traditional designation of playground. So as case studies, we use LA Metro's Expo line as a system and apply all these prototypes we designed to site-specific conditions. And with the support from the office, we have internally published the research book, as you can see here, that summarizes our project and seeks to educate the importance of play. So our next step is to move forward and realize some of our ideas via outreach with public transit agencies and local communities.
Hi, my name is Sabina from the Muse Studio. Our office, the architecture is separated in different studios, but besides from Reside that does high-end residential, the rest of the studios all does mixed use, but our studio tend to do bigger projects, a lot of master planning and bigger development that often require us to work with a local executive architect. I brought 2 projects here. This is Exchange on 16th that we work with Kilroy and Flat Architects to do this. It's located in Mission Bay.
Sorry, the label's wrong. It's in San Francisco, not Sacramento.
Oh, yes, it's San Francisco. It's surrounded, I don't know if you know Mission Bay, but it's surrounded by a lot of UCSF Hospital and Research Center. So a lot of really big glass boxes buildings, so very institutional with like stone cladding. So the client wanted to create something that is comfortable between lab research building and a creative office building, because they want to bring a different people into this part of the city. So we designed a comfortable building that could work as both creative office and laboratory building. Also, we didn't, because everything is so boxy around here, we didn't want to build another big box. So it looks like 4, great, Nate, can you go back 1 slide? So this whole thing, it looks like 4 buildings. It's actually 1 big connected building. So to break down the scale, and also you can see we're trying to play with the facade, like we start folding things up, we lifted the skirt up. So just different ways to break down the scale. Also, we have a lot of pocket parks. We have, let's see, sorry, I love doodling. Oh wait, I can't doodle, never mind. There's a lot of pocket parks. You can see on the left side, there's an entry park up there, and then on the bottom right, you can see a roof deck up there. It's really nice to be up on the roof because you could see the Bay Bridge, you can see the Warrior Center. It's super awesome. We also did the interior, so the top right image is the lobby. So very clean, a little bit more whimsical because the building is so orthogonal and serious. So we want to do a little bit more whimsical elements on the inside upon entry to the building. It's 750,000 square feet. It's quite big, and it's the largest lease in the history of San Francisco, I think, to one tenant. Dropbox took the whole thing. And the next project is San Francisco Flower Mart. This is another gigantic project. It's 2.3 million square feet. It's the biggest project in San Francisco since the Embarcadero Center in the 70s. Same Cura client. This time, it's in the heart of Soma, which is south of Mission. It's a currently industrial area that they want to convert into a more business-friendly area. So Pinterest is in there. A lot of other tech companies are starting to move into that area because they like that industrial look. They don't want to be in a glass high-rise. So this model is to create a capacity for the high-rise, but in a lower-rise setting. So we have really big floor plates. So you almost feel like on every floor in a mini campus. And because this is in such an urban area, we have urged them to put a market hall on the ground floor, the corner of 5th and Brannan, just to lift up all the worker bees and have the people that live around here to come into the site and not to create a very closed off campus. Yep, that's it.
All right, right on time. Great job, everybody. I'm so excited that the UT students get to meet a real true cross-section of our RIOS culture. We're here, we're happy to answer questions. I'll do my best as sort of an MC to pick someone to direct it to if you don't remember a name, but that you should be able to see everybody's names on the little faces there. So feel free to just shout out to somebody in particular, or just ask questions about our culture or working at RIOS, anything.
So I just wanted to first say thank you. What you were saying about having a passion for storytelling, and that's very exciting. You also mentioned that you are a multidisciplinary firm. So I was wondering if people are able to move between the different fields just to try out if maybe they're interested in something else.
Yeah, definitely. We tend to attract people who are curious about the boundaries of the disciplines. So our landscape architects generally can talk FARs and, you know, developer speak, and our architects are super plant geeks. So it's very much a lot of blurring of boundaries, but we do sometimes have people who say, no, I'd like to make a portion of my time in another track. And so we work that through our annual review process and establishing your goals and who your mentors are, so that we do it in hopefully a rigorous way. So we have a couple of landscape architects that are working to get their architecture licenses, and so we're sharing their time with architecture studios so that they're looking at, you know, both sides of a design problem. Usually we try to have them start to explore the architecture of a project where they've already been involved in the overall genesis of the concept. That helps, I think. So I think, Jeff, you had Fouad on Horton for a little while, right? Playing a role like that.
Yeah.
Maybe you could speak to just as a mentor in the architecture, receiving someone who's kind of growing into that. What was that like, or what ways we can support people who are crossing that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think like the best way I've heard it described is that when we're succeeding at RIOS, you kind of can't tell if the landscape architects did it or the architects did it, right? There's this kind of like interesting continuity between the disciplines that happens. And I think, at least in my opinion, that's kind of like a measure of success, of design success. But yeah, as Nate was saying, Fouad, really talented landscape architect. I tend to work a lot with the landscape architects. I've learned a lot about landscape architecture in the last few years, which is amazing. And Fouad joined our team for Horton Plaza. And kind of, you know, it's always a different perspective because, you know, I think landscape architects, they're disciplinarily different in terms of their actual knowledge, and they know about plant species and they know about a lot of things that we don't know about as architects. But I think they also kind of think about the world in a little different way. sometimes. And that's really the kind of perspective that I think is really valuable when you bring someone into a project and you say, you know, of course, we're going to help you with the kind of like technical parts of what needs to happen with code and all those things and constructability, but you get a little bit of a different read on what the architecture actually is. And I think that to me has been kind of like the interesting part of having Fawad join with us.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's, you know, even for folks who aren't going to officially go get a license in something else, just on a daily basis, being immersed in other people's practices and disciplines, you naturally start to gravitate towards more holistic solutions. And so even sometimes when you're not working on a project with somebody, you look at the materials cart of an interior designer and just like start, your head blows, because it's just like, look at all those colors and textures and inspiration. And, you know, or talking with the guy who was working on the handle of our most, you know, sought after coffee cup, you know, talking to someone like that about ergonomics, and then having a conversation about seating, you know, and it's like you're on a whole nother level, you know, just by exposure to those other disciplines. So, you know, it's both, we do support people who explicitly are trying to be practicing in multiple disciplines, and that might be the still relatively rare case, like might be, you know, 1 to 5% of the office, but the other 95% of the office is on a daily basis becoming, you know, multidimensional.
Also want to add that we have a pretty strong environmental graphics and branding department that we did not quite cover. Also, one time we have a designer or architects graduate came in for a couple of years. He's great. And then we were designing a shirt in the office, and he was part of that process, and he loved it so much he actually changed career and went to fashion school, and we were fully supportive of it, whatever, to help people find their true passion. So people change directions all the time. It's totally fine. And we're hoping to create a place that you could find your true passion, could be within architecture or outside architecture.
I also wanted to add that I've been working with our architects on the White Square project I just presented, Camera and Nick, especially Camera brings a lot of kind of different angles of thinking to the project. That project specifically has an integrated restaurant with the site. So a lot of our projects are very cross-disciplinary in order to have the opportunity to collaborate internally, kind of ensures the integration of the project moving forward. So you don't have to work with external architecture consultants. And also now I think Cam is only working in landscape studio, and he loves it as an architect. So all his projects are in landscape studio. So yeah, we really have the opportunity for you to cross disciplines.
Yeah, we do work with a number of other consultants as well. Like, you know, we were working with Foster and a number of other big architects. So as a landscape practice, for those in the landscape world that are listening in here, I would say about 2/3 of our work is internal collaboration. No, 1/3 is internal collaboration, 1/3 is standalone landscapes, parks, streets, et cetera, and about 1/3 is external collaborations with other architects. Any other questions?
That might kind of answer a question I was going to ask, but I really appreciate how you all have such an interdisciplinary practice. It seems ideal and fun to me. But why do you think, or how do you think it works for you all that so many other firms don't practice in that way?
I think it goes, honestly, it takes leadership, and our founder, Mark RIOS, it's really in his DNA to be super curious. It was him who, you know, at the end, or he's not at the end of his career, but now he can say something like, yeah, we should totally do a shirt. And like, I'm going to name it after my dad, and it's going to be this modern guayabera, and just take us into new directions like that. But it started with his interest both in architecture and landscape architecture, and working to really understand a client or a community and say, they have this need, and it doesn't matter what my diploma says, let's figure out how to satisfy this concern or bring a creativity to it. So that little by little over decades has established a pattern of accretion. So our latest is filmmaking. We had an architect who was super, passionate about storytelling through film about our work, but now is establishing a practice of that kind of storytelling and getting clients for RIOS even beyond the built environment. But it takes a leader who says, we may not be the best at something yet, but we're going to bring a new perspective to it, and we're going to take a calculated risk. And there's totally a bunch of failures along the way. Like if you go back through it, like the blankets aren't selling anymore, or the rugs. Oh my God, all of us have like amazing rugs at home because there was an era when we were like totally going to take over the rug market, and it just didn't take off the way the coffee cups did. So then they were all like, pennies on the dollar for us to take them home. So there's, it's just been a culture of risk-taking and entrepreneurialism, not in the pure, it has a business dimension, but it's about supporting the initiative of, this kind of cross-section of staff. And we have people all the time who bring up business ideas within the practice, and we evaluate those ideas and try to find a way to support them in making that part of this expansion. But none of that would have happened if there wasn't sort of this like fundamental commitment to that from the founders.
I also think it's how we tackle each project. So it doesn't matter if it's designing a cup or designing a giant building or designing a house or doing landscape. We tackle each problem individually. We think about that problem based on its own thing. We bring previous experience to inform us, but if you go through our projects, every project looks very different. We're not trying to have like one solution. This will work for all office TIs. Everything, we rethink about it. So it helps us to we could tackle landscape, we could run architecture, we could do product design. We do the same mentality, but we're not saying that we just push out office TI, for example, for the same thing. So that helps us to do different things. It takes a little longer, but products is a little different, but it's way more fun that not everything is the same.
Yeah, thanks.
Hi, thank you all for presenting such a diverse kind of portfolio of projects. They're all really interesting to see. I guess what was most impactful to me was kind of when you took the time to discuss issues of diversity and inclusion and equity. I think that's been a first in a lot of the meet and greets that I've been to this semester. I wish it was something that everyone was doing. But yeah, so seeing you take such an initiative on those and do the work of making it a center in your work is really important. So I just wanted to thank you for that. And I'm really excited to see how that progresses through your work in the future. But I did want to ask a little bit more about how your studio culture is, like on the day-to-day, what is work like, and kind of maybe examples of that cross studio culture and how you collaborate with each other, and just get an idea of like what it's like to work at the firm.
Anybody want to go first? And obviously studio culture is very different right now, just like your studio culture is a little different. But yeah, anybody feel free to give out some personal example.
Well, my life is very boring. I'm on Zoom all day. I'm sitting on my computer, but I'm talking to very different people. I'm talking to people in Wisconsin. I'm talking to people in San Francisco. I'm talking to clients, consultants every day. But one thing I want to point out is that we have a director of culture, especially because of these pandemic days. She's working extra hard to make sure that we're all still connected. So I think a couple of weeks ago, she did a Sri Lanka week or like lunch and learn. So she's from Sri Lanka. She just came and like talk about Sri Lanka. She ordered dessert for everybody from Sri Lanka, like a Sri Lanka restaurant. And then we did pumpkin carving competition for our staff and family. So we do a lot of things outside just work and work, especially these days. So we do fun things. We actually decorated out our new office expansion and made it a Halloween experience, a walkthrough installation experience, and we invited staff and family to come by. It was really fun.
I guess I can speak a little bit. I would say one of the great things about RIOS and the fact that everyone has these cross-discipline and even like not even design curiosities is everyone feels very open and free to kind of, hang up their work or have their drawings out and, just have casual conversations about design or about, philosophy or about music. And then there's always a way to kind of continue and to explore those curiosities, even though they're not necessarily related to the project you're working on, but it's something that could serve as an inspiration for something else. I know that one of the people in architecture that I kind of used to visit, on my daily walks around the office, I was talking about a project that we had and that we were using a duck as a metaphor for something. And, just having that conversation, he was like, "Oh, I'm also using a bird." And it was just like having that type of connection. Like we felt like there's an assurance that we're not, too crazy for thinking that a duck could be an architectural departure. But just, yeah, it's just, there's so much collaboration and it doesn't have to necessarily be on a project work. It's just kind of like, just all of those curiosities that you have.
Yeah, those research projects that Vicky talked about, we have lots and lots of different topics that have been funded, and those are explicitly intended to be cross-studio collaborations to get people out of their usual group of project team members and into thinking differently. So a group of us looked at the impacts of thermal comfort and extreme heat, and that was a multidisciplinary perspective. There, we've got groups looking at all sorts of topics from, robots and automation to, fire ecology. And each of these questions can be examined from multiple disciplinary perspectives, and so we intentionally fund teams that are looking at it through multiple lenses.
Yeah, and we also have an educational opportunity fund where the office will pay for 75% for you to go take classes. A lot of people take like pottery classes, music classes. You have to justify that it helps your work. So like the music person is like, oh, it helps you study rhythm and whatnot. And then we're like, okay, you justified it, like come to class. So we don't want you to be a worker bee. We don't want you to be in the office 24/7. We want you to go out and learn something new and come back and bring a fresh perspective of something else to our office. Like we're all architects. We kind of know what architects do. It's that extra perspective that we want people to bring in, and we'll do like a lot of things to encourage people to go out and do something else and bring it back to the office.
So in terms of fresh perspectives, I'll just add to what Sabina and Clarence and Nate have been talking about in terms of office culture. So I moved to Portland at the beginning of this year, which was a weird time to move anywhere. But we also have an office in Portland now. It's small. There's 3 of us, but I'm an architect and there's a landscape architect up here. And our head of IT also works up here in Portland. So my, experience is a little bit different now, although weirdly similar to everyone's experience because everyone is sort of in a way remote now. But we do have a small office up here in Portland as well. And so we're looking for work and
so it isn't, it's a little bit of a tangent from your question, Temi, but it is something we're going through right now. So I will share that what Jeff just described, we just released a new geographic policy for everyone in the office, building on this spirit of experimentation and realizing that we're in a market that has extremely high housing costs and that we want to support the passions of our staff wherever they may roam. So we actually have one of my fellow studio directors in landscape architecture has moved to Bozeman, Montana. And based on the survey results of of everyone in the office, we're quite likely to see other staff members who choose to move to other cities for lots of different reasons. And we think it'll have some challenges in terms of logistics and mentorship and so forth. But we want to leverage all of this knowledge and learning we've been going through collaborating remotely and figure out how to support that and just make that part of this expansion of our commitment to diversity in lots of different ways and inclusive of that people are going to have lots of different experiences if they're in all those places. And hopefully that brings a richness to the work rather than being, you know, we've all been just in one big warehouse together and we know what that's like, and we like that, but we're always curious and we're always willing to take a risk on something that might expand our horizons.
Thank you so much. Those are all really helpful. Thank you.
I'll ask a question if no one else is going to say something. I'm an urban planner at UT, and so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about where planners work in the organization and if planners typically have design degrees with them or if you hire just traditional bread and butter urban planners.
So in the past, all of our planning was being done by people who had an architecture degree or a landscape architecture degree. And I would say the predominance of that work was the kind of large scale development projects that Sabina spoke about and really came from one of our partners, Bob Hale, that was largely his interest. But in the last 2 years, we did make our first move into hiring planners that are explicitly more on the urban planning and urban design track and have those backgrounds. And so far we've hired 2 and they are within the umbrella of the landscape practice because they're largely working on public spaces and systems of public realm infrastructure. And so that is a growth area for us. And a lot of us collaborate with them because they tend to be the super connectors that are working across scales. And that is a natural fit with us and is just like the other experimentations, you know, we'll see where it leads. But that it's definitely something we're continuing to invest in. And so we do have urban planners and urban designers. And I could see a point in the future where there's enough of them that they become even a studio that then is collaborating with other studios going forward. So, but some examples of projects that they're leading. There are several corridor projects in Los Angeles and in other communities that they are like, you know, streetscape corridors, design guidelines for districts. They are often still involved in those large redevelopment projects on the earlier end in establishing the overall framework for that work. And then what I like about it, even though I don't want to work at that scale, I think you have to move up the food chain of where decisions get made. And so those really great planning can establish a framework which allows the other kinds of placemaking to occur. And so, you know, having the opportunity to work on those large scale master plans leads hopefully to lots and lots of, you know, public spaces and civic buildings and community building more broadly for RIOS.
Thank you.
Sorry, we were already a lot of us. Otherwise we would have brought a planner too.
I just had a question. I like the multidisciplinary and how everyone can co-collaborate with each other, but are there standard programs that each discipline prefers to use, or do they just kind of integrate all of the design and modeling software?
I'll let the folks, I look over shoulders and I do my little iPad sketching, but I do know that they use the same software, but I'll let some of the folks who are in the weeds of it talk about the Revits and the Rhinos and all that.
I guess from the landscape point of view, we've recently gone to trying to establish Revit as a platform for doing a lot of our landscape documentation. We'll still do some of the earlier design work in CAD and Rhino and SketchUp Not a lot of people use SketchUp in the office, but it's still used just because there are a lot of collaborators that use SketchUp and they don't use Rhino. But yeah, so we transitioned from AutoCAD to Revit on a lot of the projects just because there's an easy collaboration with some of the engineering teams or some of the architecture teams. But then there's also sort of the entire Adobe suite that we also use in landscape. I think I'm covering everything. I don't know, Vicky, if you have anything to add.
While we're waiting on Vicky or any of the architects who want to talk about their workflow, we should talk about just the collaboration tools have blown up in COVID life. Like we used to have all this white wall space at the edge of the warehouse, and it was constantly being fought over. Like, no, you need to take that down. I have a client coming in. I've got the UT School of Architecture students coming. I need you to wipe all that out. Like it was always a struggle over real estate. And we all use these things called Miro boards now that are these virtual infinite pinup spaces. And it's just gone like wildfire through all of our teams. Now every project has this massive visual display that can be constantly curated and updated. And we're all on Teams. We're obviously all Zooming all the time, but the amount of collaboration tools that have become standard operating procedure for us has been really impressive.
Back to software, architects, we usually use Revit for documentation. Some early stages we will, master planning, we will use AutoCAD. 3D, we're definitely going with Rhino. If you do SketchUp, you're gonna get frowned upon. Sorry, but Rhino is definitely the way to go. It's so much more accurate. It's so much easier to render. It's how we do it. And then for 3D, we do, for visualization and animation, we go to Lumion.
So if you don't have much Revit experience, we have a BIM coordinator in-house, and he conducts extensive trainings for the new hires to catch you up to speed. And also we, in terms of working with external consultants, we also take advantage of BIM 360. It's like a platform where all the consultants can upload their models to. So we think it's Revit is definitely the way to go. It helps the collaboration, and it's a very efficient tool to coordinate with different disciplines.
And even within the office, you have multiple people work on the same file at the same time. For instance, Cat 1, check it out. You have to
Sometimes my team, the architect said, "Oh, you made this change," because it showed up in my Revit model.
And then Vicky will come charging over the architect's side. Like, why did you change that?
All right, do we have any other questions? All right, well, I guess that anybody else, one last minute. All right, well, thank y'all so much for being here. We really appreciate it. It's good to see y'all. I've been to your office in LA and it was beautiful, so I'm sure y'all are missing it.
All right, well, we really appreciate meeting all of you guys, and keep up your good works at school, and maybe when all this, whatever we're in, is over, hopefully we'll see a few folks make their way out this way, or maybe we'll be in Austin again. So give it a shot.